Hi, I'm Karen Hurt. I'm here with our next edition of Asking for a Friend. And I have got to tell you, this question comes in all the time. People hear our keynote and they hear the vulnerable stories and they say, yeah, I feel the power of it. And I know I should be a little bit more transparent and vulnerable with my team. I've read how well this works for building trust and how important it is. And it's hard. Where do I start with being vulnerable? So today I have a very special guest from downstairs, David Dye, my husband, business partner, co-author, who has written a brand new book called Tomorrow Together. I love this book. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this side of the camera.
Yeah, so if you're a regular watcher of Asking for a Friend, David is often behind the scenes working with Jared, our producer, getting everything just right. So it's nice to have you as my interview today. So let's talk about this topic, David, of vulnerability. This book is very different than some of our other books, right? This is essays of your real personal experiences. There's a lot of vulnerability here. So what advice do you have for someone who is trying to show up more authentic and working to get the courage to do that well?
Yeah. Well, first, I'd applaud you for if you're wanting to show up as a leader with more authenticity, more vulnerability, good for you. And if the pandemic, leadership through the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that the leaders who do that are more connected, more influential, more effective with their team. But the question that was asked that so many of your listeners are asking and keynote attendees is how do I do that? It's hard. And it is hard. It can feel very scary. And I think there's this sense that leaders often have of, I've got to have it all together. I've got to be in control. And if I show up with vulnerability in any way, I'm going to give away my power. The reality is the opposite. First, power is an illusion. We don't have control over anything at all. What we have is influence. And so stepping into our vulnerability, stepping into that transparency and authenticity actually is stepping into our power because we're stepping into more influence.
Why should someone choose to be a bit more vulnerable with their team?
That goes to the heart for me why I wrote this book. I believe that leaders are in the hope business. I mean, that's the center of leadership is together. If all of us cooperate together, we can have a better tomorrow than we do today. So that's leadership. Hey guys, let's do this together. Tomorrow can be better.
So how does a leader do this? Where do they start?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about creating hope, people need to be able to look at you, and that's where the role modeling comes in. And what's your journey? Have you been where they are, and how'd you get where you are now? And so, to be able to share those moments, you're asking how do I show up with vulnerability and authenticity? One of the places you can start that's the most impactful for your team. How did you learn the critical lessons you're trying to impart to them? Where were those moments of learning where you screwed up, you didn't get it right? And I filled this book with as many of those moments in my own life as I possibly could.
I love that. So it was interesting. I was at a hairdresser recently, and there is my hairdresser she is mentoring all these young hairdressers. And the last visit I was there, she said, you know what? And she told this story where she's like, well, I measured it and I got an inch, and she ended up totally cutting off 3 inches of somebody's hair by accident. It was a disaster. But you could see the look on these young girls' faces going, oh my gosh, it's not just me. And look at where she is now. And there was hope in that for them. So can you share one of the stories from your book that you feel is particularly meaningful or powerful to you?
Well, I got to share, since we're talking together, I got to share the one that you were there for. So it was our first Thanksgiving dinner together. I'm sure you remember this. I call this how to cook Thanksgiving dinner, but I think this is pertinent for leaders because you invited me to cook our first Thanksgiving dinner together, and you invited your whole family and told them what a great cook I am.
Well, because you are a very remarkable cook, and I'm actually looking forward to whatever you're making for dinner tonight.
Well, thank you. But at that moment, what I heard was a lot of pressure. Like I needed to perform. So I went into high stress mode. I use a spreadsheet, no joke, to cook big meals. And I was all about create this fantastic feast and meal and all of that. Where you were after, your expectation was more of a romantic, connected family, friends gathering, and
The
you and
right
I
way,
cooking
the
together.
right way to cook Thanksgiving dinner.
The right way. Uh-oh. All right. Well, that's going to be a whole different asking for a friend. But this is a moment for leaders because you and I came to that with different expectations, and those different expectations created conflict. We were not getting along, and we had to stop. And you, I believe, called the time out and said, "Hey, let's go for a walk and talk this through." And we did. And we sorted it out. And as a result, we're able to come together and do the things that both of us were after, although those were not the best mashed potatoes
I
that
was
I've
just
ever
going to
made
say,
myself.
but the mashed potatoes. All right, that's
Not
another
so much.
story. Maybe Jared, our producer, leave a comment and tell everybody about the mashed
There is a
potatoes.
picture of those potatoes floating around somewhere. I hope it doesn't see the light of day.
All right. So, David, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell people where they can find your book? And I know that you're giving away some of the essays so people can get a glimpse. Where can they download
Absolutely.
those?
Happy to, for sure. So you can get the book anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, IndieBound, your favorite independent bookstore, or you can go to tomorrowtogetherbook.com, and it's got links to all those. But there's also a set of excerpts of free downloads of sample chapters for you. So encourage you to go there: tomorrowtogetherbook.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And see you next time behind the scenes on Asking for a Friend.